So tonight is our last gathering until January, and I just wanted to note that uh, we are not without gathering opportunities. However, during December, we are going to continue every Monday night having the Morning into Unity, Lament and Hope peace prayers at 6 from 6 to 6:30. Donna Church and I were talking as we were checking in about how deeply moved we were by the last one, not exactly knowing fully why we were so moved. In great part, I think it's because it's interfaith. And we had Baha'i, Muslim, Jewish, and more, and we're going to continue to expand that. And just to continue to say a word about that, the Carter Center and this national global violence watchdog organization have clearly tapped Atlanta as one of 3 hotspot cities with a lot of violence going on. Kim Jackson and I will talk about that tomorrow night at our conversation at the Cathedral Bookstore event at 7 or 6. I've forgotten what it is. You can go to the Cathedral Bookstore and get the link. There's a big rally this coming Saturday here in Atlanta. We will have a meeting with the Carter Center on Thursday or Friday, and can tell me to kind of get briefed about that. So we will be gathering for prayer at 6 every Monday night through the January 5th election, because that's when Atlanta is considered to be a hotspot for that long. But we just might have a check-in time sometime during December, just so that we can be together and combat the seasonal downs that sometimes come during December. Nevertheless, tonight is our last time for this fall series, and as is the pattern, I never know on Wednesday morning exactly what we're going to cover. Thank God my schedule, and God bless Bethany, yay Bethany, who's with us tonight, protects me on Wednesdays so I can get my PowerPoint. And it's like a journey of a sermon. I really never know where it's going to wind up, and that certainly was the case tonight. So I don't have anything much at all from this particular book. I do have a good deal from Richard Rohr and Barbara Brown Taylor tonight, and something that I think is important for us to consider at this point in our life. So having given that introduction, the next slide, Mark Simmons wanted me to make sure that I remind everybody to pledge to the stewardship campaign at St. Luke's. And thank you so much. So many of you on this screen have already pledged. And several of you who are not formal members of St. Luke's have come on board as pledgers for 2021 at St. Luke's, and deep, deep vows of gratitude to each one of you. I will handwrite a note to everybody who pledges. So, but I really want to thank you. And Melba Hughes, our senior warden, said it's very, very easy, in fact, joyful to pledge online. So you can just go to the St. Luke's website and press the pledge button, and go to the stewardship down page, and you can pledge. So I hope you will. Now, next slide. So I've been thinking a lot about people acting in and out of alignment with their true selves, and have been thinking that a lot of that can be understood by whether or not we're triggered. I recently had a friend who was just totally triggered. I could not get him out of his trigger. He was so angry and resentful and blaming and attacking and totally unattracted to trying to see the other side. We were talking about my book earlier on. That is a sign in neuroscience of being in the oldest brain that we have, the reptilian brain, where we really are feeling threatened, and all of our blood has left the top portion of our brain, the younger brain that we have, called the frontal cortex, prefrontal cortex, where we innovate and create, and just leave also the mammalian brain, where we have feelings of attachment to one another and care for our young, and where we can be playful, and get down to the reptilian brain, which is the fight or flight. And another way of talking about that is losing it. I love the fact that the prodigal son, the kind of the turning point in that parable is he's gone through all of his wealth and all of his all of the stuff that he got from his dad, his inheritance, and he's now eating with the pigs, which of course for Jews would be the offense of the offenses, and then he came to himself. Well, this is about coming to yourself or ourself when we're triggered. And it occurred to me when my friend was in the middle of all this that they had just lost awareness and connection with their true self. And I've never had that thought before. And then I thought, you know, a lot of us in our nation have lost connection with our true self. I do like Biden's calling us to be opponents, but not enemies. And a lot of our American culture has kind of lost the art of being opponents without becoming enemies with one another. So I want that to be one of the beats of tonight. But the deepest beat that we're going to is how I feel after this journey today of reading and reflecting and making this PowerPoint, about how I want to invite all of us into some really sacred rest. So that's where we're headed with this series of PowerPoints, but there's some really delightful, wonderful gems of truth and language that we're gonna, and theology and spirituality we're gonna get to. But the idea is the whole business of our restful place is with our true self, not our false self. Next slide. So I think it was Sue McAvoy who sent me this daily meditation on November 13, which was just such a synopsis of the love theology that I've learned from Thomas Merton and reinforced by Richard Rohr and Ilia Delio, and it's finding its expression in the big love theology that we're articulating and means so much to us at Downtown Peachtree. And I just wanted to use almost all of that meditation to begin our PowerPoint with tonight as a solution. And Rohr says something that's very Mertonian, which is love is who we really, really are. Before I go on, yesterday I loved it. The keynote speaker at the Racism and Economics webinar given by Raphael Bostic's outfit, the Fed, said that unfortunately so much economic health or poverty or illness is conditioned on the least important thing about us, and that is the color of our skin. And it's really tragic when we have a system that says your skin color determines your value. And Merton was speaking in the 60s when he said this thing that Richard Rohr has adapted, that you're not your skin color, you're not even your gender, your sexual orientation. Fundamentally, you are love. We're going to run across the image of having one lung later in this PowerPoint. a new kind of image for the oneness of the interconnectedness and the interwebness of us all, interbeing. To go on with this quote from Richard Rohr, love is who you are. And when you don't live according to love, you are outside of being. You're not being real. When you love, you're acting according to your deepest being, your deepest truth. You're operating according to your dignity. And that's an old quote from Richard Rohr, which he reused on November 13 in his daily meditation. And he said, drawing from my many years of teaching, I can honestly say that the most powerful, most needed, and most essential teaching is always about love. Love is our foundation, our destiny. It is where we come from and where we're headed. Faith, hope, and love remain, but the greatest of these is love. And that's a direct quote from this old quote of Thomas Merton: love is our true destiny. We do not find the meaning of life by ourselves alone. We find it with another. I think that's one of the reasons that our energy changes, literally changes inside our bodies when we come on to this experience on Wednesdays and check in and then have these PowerPoint discussions together. And when we do anything in community, I preached a sermon recently about the preposition with and how central it is and how important it is in the Bible. So with is an act of love. God with us is one of the names of Jesus, Emmanuel. We're headed toward Christmas. We've already been doing a whole bunch of Christmas taping, y'all, for all of the services for Christmas and Advent, Thanksgiving. So as we take a break from our Wednesday nights before we come back in January, I just want us all to have as a mantra that love is the key to understanding who we really are and who everybody else really is. And that's our destiny. It's where we come from, where we're headed. Next slide. So Rohr goes on in this meditation to give a different understanding of wisdom. And his book, The Wisdom Pattern, is what we have been studying this fall. But he talks about how wisdom is the clearing away of impediments to love. If I can catch myself being triggered, if I can catch myself identifying with something that's not the deepest part of who I am, that's part of the false self of who I am, and clear away those impediments, that's an act of wisdom. So just to continue quoting Rohr, my hope whenever I speak or write is to help clear away the impediments to receiving, allowing, trusting, and participating in this foundational love. God's love is planted inside each of us as the Holy Spirit, who according to Jesus will teach you everything and remind you of all that I told you. It's wonderful to have an internal GPS device. Is that what's called? Global Positioning System, to help you find where you are and where you're going. Love is who you are. And all I can do in my speeches and books, Rohr says, is to remind you of what you really do already know deep within you and within your true self, and invite you to live connected to this source. He loves to tell the story about how people will come up to him after his speeches, and he's such a gifted speaker. And people will come up and say, I really want to thank you for reminding me of what I already knew. And he says that happens so frequently. And it's a sign every time that the truth and your true self is operating inside you all the time. And what we need to do is clear away the impediments. And I'm connecting this with the triggering slide before. Being triggered. being triggerable is an impediment to love. Next slide. So just to continue with this meditation from Richard Rohr, who says our family of origin is divine, he goes back to a lot of those Bible verses that we use as mantras at St. Luke's in terms of God is love, and whoever remains in love remains in God, and God in her or him. And the creation is Genesis, that we're made in the image of likeness of God. He could have added John 1, which I preach about in my Christmas Day sermon, which I've already videotaped. Out of the Trinity's generative loving relationship, creation takes form, mirroring its creator. And if we're truly created in the image and likeness of God, then our family of origin is divine. I just love that. When I moved to Mississippi and I became the dean of the cathedral there, this wonderful lady said, I need to tell you something about Jackson, Mississippi. I said, tell me. She says, well, I'm from Houston, but I've lived in Jackson for 40 years. I married a Jacksonian. And I was at a cocktail party not long ago, and somebody said, now, where are you from? And she said, well, I'm from Jackson. And this Jacksonian said, no, honey. I mean, where are your mama's people from? And there is that kind of cultural thing that goes on probably in every city. But the answer is, where are you from? My family of origin is divinity. I am from divine. We were created by a loving God to be love in the world. Our core is original blessing, not original sin. Our starting point is positive, and as it is written in the first chapter of the Bible, it is very good. We do have a good place to go home. If the beginning is right, the rest is made considerably easier, because we know and can trust the clear direction of our life's tangent. But I think tonight I really just want to emphasize that we can't know that, y'all. We can't be in touch with that if we don't give ourselves some space to be in touch with that. When we are so feverish, and Thomas Merton says to have a feverish agenda and schedule is to do violence to oneself. When we live so feverishly with all of the demands, we are creating an impediment between us and being in touch with and aware and accessing our family of origin, which is the holy. Okay, now next slide. Now, everybody I read who's a theologian, and a lot of non-theologians, are in the process of re-narrating or telling the story, the real story, the story of the really real, as we will hear later in this PowerPoint presentation, about America, about the country, about nature, about science, about the Big Bang, about the nature of God, about who Jesus was, the religion of Jesus, not the religion about Jesus, which we will talk about tonight when we talk about Howard Thurman. And one of the things that is so very important is for us to understand that the truly true, the really real is unity, is oneness. I love this graphic I found where Jesus and these fisher people are truly one. They are connected in ways that are way down deep in the ocean floor or in the Sea of Galilee. This is an event that happened in the Sea of Galilee. And as Thomas Merton said in 1958, when he had his epiphany on the corner of 4th and Walnut in Louisville, Kentucky, we are living in a delusion and an illusion of separateness and we must all overcome it. Or as he said just a month before he was killed to the monastics who were gathered in the East, in Asia, we are already one, but we imagine that we are not one. And we have to come out of that illusion. We have to wake up, as Jesus loves to say, wake up. It is the primary task of religion to communicate not worthiness, but union, to reconnect people, which is what the word religion means, to religament us, to reconnect people to their original identity. We are hidden with Christ in God. God's description, God's job description, is to draw us back into primal and intimate relationships and relationship. But let me kind of bang my drum tonight. The beat tonight is we have to take some time. We have to have a pause. We have to give ourselves a break. We have to give ourselves a deep breath or contemplative space to re-access our union with one another and with God. Next slide. So the call is to live in this state of love, even in a triggerable experience, a triggering experience, for us to somehow have our core. We'll talk about our inner core in a few minutes. Have our inner core awake to our union. Now, all of this y'all have heard before, and all of this you already know. I'm just repeating it because I need to preach this to myself. And as we go into a very busy time, let's take the invitation from Thanksgiving to rest and to live in this love. So, Rohr ends this meditation I've been quoting from. God, lover of life, lover of these lives, God, lover of our souls, lover of our bodies, lover of all that exists. In fact, it is your love that keeps it all alive. May we live in this love. May we never doubt this love. May we know that we are love, that we were created for love, that we are a reflection of you, that you love yourself in us, and therefore we are perfectly lovable. May we never doubt this deep and abiding and perfect goodness. We are because you are. Dude, my heart's beating fast because I think my wife is coming in the apartment from Birmingham. Next slide. So I'm now going to tell you a story from my meditation the other day. Hey, Happy. Welcome home. So a couple of weeks ago, I had this amazing meditation time. And I sensed toward the end, when I was coming into that deep, open, empty space of love and grace that I like to go to at the end of every thing. You want to say hi to everybody, Hope? Everybody's muted. Just say hi. Hi. There's Hope. Welcome home. So in this period of meditation, I sensed toward the end that these prayer times, these periods of contemplation, are actually like going to a meeting. Now, y'all, I spend so much of my time in meetings, and a lot of the time I am facilitating the meeting. And it is nice to be in a meeting where I feel that the genius of love is facilitating the meeting. The genius of love is setting the agenda for the meeting and is facilitating the meeting. And during the meeting, I receive the agenda for the day and the energy by which to make that agenda tangible throughout the day. It's a wonderful, 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 wonderful experience. Now, on this particular day, I got this message. You're in the meeting, the genius of love, another word for God, right? Another word for the wisdom of Jesus, right? Another word for the Spirit. Now stay in this meeting all day long. The meeting is not going to be adjourned. It's not going to be over at the end of this period of contemplation. I had the neatest day. I just felt like I was in a meeting with the genius of love in charge, leading the agenda and facilitating the day all day long. It was really, really wonderful. Next slide. So, an image we're going to get from a poem from Howard Thurman later on will give us the image of moving stillness. Though you're moving around, inside, you're still. Lots of people around you are moving around, but inside, you're still. Now, this comes from Howard Thurman, and many of you have heard me say ad nauseum that for Howard Thurman, this state of stillness is beneath the level of quietness. You go to quiet, but then you have to go on to stillness. I mean, a lot of us live alone and it's quiet in our apartments, but we could be unstill even while alone. The idea is to get down to stillness, where you can hear the still small voice, which Elijah heard, and then get there and be there throughout the day. Next slide. Now, I'm going to shift to another forum that is already recorded and will be aired in December. And it's with my dear brother of the soul, Gregory Ellison, who is the Dr. Gregory Ellison, who's the professor of pastoral care at Emory University in the School of Religion and also in Candler School of Theology. He loves to wear baseball caps, always. And he has this new book out, which I interviewed him about for a Sunday forum in December, called Anchored in the Current, which is an image from Dr. Howard Thurman. And what Greg has done is he has edited a series of articles about Howard Thurman. And it is a powerful book. And his introduction is just stunning. And I was very tempted to teach that as this PowerPoint. We're going to go to another article in the book, one by Barbara Brown Taylor. But I just want to say that this is the book I recommend. I recommend Howard Thurman to become a household term in your life. He is an educator, he is an activist, he is a guide, and he is a prophet. And Greg is, and he's a mystic, and Greg is one too. Greg is a native of Atlanta. So next slide. So what I'm going to give you now for the rest of this time is some language from Barbara Brown Taylor's contribution to this book. And I think it's got some powerful truths, ideas, and language. And it's actually a story, it's an accounting of her reading Luther Smith's book on Howard Thurman. Luther Smith was one of our forum speakers last December, I think, or last November, long before the pandemic. And when we were having a series of people coming in and talking about Howard Thurman, who's pictured there underneath Barbara Brown Taylor. And I'm trying to get Barbara Brown Taylor to be one of my guests for the forum this December, because she has a new book out. It's quite full of wonder. Anyway, she said that Luther Smith gave her a frame for what she saw, that Howard Thurman was really a Christian mystic. Everything he said, wrote, taught, and did flowed from one single source, which was his direct and incontrovertible encounter with the divine. And that's how Thurman discovered the really real. His own experiential relationship with the divine, which it started with, he grew up in Daytona Beach, Florida, and he was a nature mystic. And he, for those of you who don't know this guy, he was Dr. Martin Luther King's spiritual director, and had literally met with Gandhi before Gandhi died in India for 3 days, and brought satyagraha, truth, force, and nonviolence to Dr. King, to James Lawson, that group. Anyway, Thurman's encounter with the divine was how he discovered the really real. And that was the funding of his courage to challenge the unreal in all of its guises in life, injustices, injustices. I really like Barbara going out our own in terms of some unique language. Injustices, unkindness, unreconciliation, and unfreedom. She said this fresh focus helped me see how. Oh, Adelaide is asking, what do you mean funded? It's a beautiful Barbara Brown Taylor substitution for the word resourced. It was it's a spiritual funding or a spiritual resourcing of something, and she's saying that was where he got his energy. It's the energizing root of his courage to challenge the unreal in all of its guises. And this fresh focus helped Barbara Brown Taylor see how Thurman's life as an activist was actually nourished by his life as a contemplative. Now, this is a claim that Richard Rohr makes, and that Thomas Merton makes, and that so many other people make. And that is that if you really are interested in activism that is effective and fruit-bearing and really does change things, be a contemplative, because that's where you get the energy for the agenda, that truth that the really real gives you. Next slide. So this is continuing with Barbara Brown Taylor's article in this book that Greg Allison has put together. And she excerpts this poem from Howard Thurman. And she talks about how she misread the poem the first time, and how on her second reading, so much changed. But before she gets into the poem, she says, she makes the claim that Thurman's voice was really powerful because he often gave his voice a rest. Her metaphorical way of talking about how frequently he took time away from the fray. It's again this Mertonian idea of when you live a frenzied life, you're doing violence to yourself. And it really is about Jesus. I mean, one of the things that we can see from the life of Jesus is how frequently he went away from a crowd to be by himself, to pray. And the Christian tradition of spirituality has really emphasized that solitude is different from isolation. We're not talking about people isolating themselves here. We're talking about, and we're not talking about people trying to do things by themselves. We're not talking about the anti-communitarian or the anti-communal life, but the life that has to have some solitude in it. And here again, we're talking about something deeper than quietness that allows you to go. I mean, you can live alone, but you can be so busy and preoccupied and fearful and anxious. This is about getting down to the stillness beneath the quiet. So here's the poem. And I won't dwell on all of it because there's some parts that just really need to be dwelled on. So this first part, I'll go ahead and give you a spoiler alert. This first part, Barbara Brown Taylor is Thurman saying, this is a way you can do religion the wrong way. Do this, do that. Give up your goods. Hold nothing back. Free yourself to find to find your way. Commit your way to something good that makes upon your life the great demand. Place upon the altar all hopes and dreams. Thanks, Bob Wicker. Thank you. Leaving no thing untouched, nothing unclaimed, and yet no peace. What more I ask with troubled mind. So that's the first part of the poem. Here comes the real stuff, according to Barbara's interpretation of this poem. The answer, God says, is moving stillness. And then the burning stare of the eyes of God pierces my inmost core, beyond my strength, beyond my weakness, beyond what I am, beyond what I would be, until my refuge is in God alone. This above all else I claim, God says. And Barbara Brown Taylor talks about being perforated by God. The idea is getting below all the things that we claim for our ego, as David Brooks says, to get down to our eulogy instead of our, what does he say it? Oh gosh, somebody put it in the chat. He said, we've got our eulogy values and our legacy values. I think it's something else. It's something like our CV values or something like that. Anyway, it'll come to us. My brain is old. Yeah, our resume. Thank you, Jamie. He distinguishes our resume, and Barbara O'Brien is coming to our rescue also, in addition to Jamie. Yeah, David Brooks tells our resume values and our eulogy values. Now, what Barbara Brown Taylor is saying about this particular poem is that you can have a religion of the resume as opposed to the religion of moving stillness. I think that's worth thinking about. Next slide. So, Brother Thurman says we need to find a central door over which our name is written. And back to Barbara Brown Taylor. These are her words. Thurman was telling me how little peace there was in following the familiar calls to faith that leads to a dead end of a false road. But the answer to it all is moving stillness. And then the burning stare of God. I don't like that so much because it's not loving enough. But I'm quoting Barbara here. Piercing the inmost core. I think it's more like love penetrating down to the inmost core. Those were the verbs I would use. After so much striving, the more arrives as less. Being still, being seen, being perforated by God, find a central door over which your name is written. And I love this. image. We are all one lung through which life is breathing. The heart of it all is being open to the constant newness of the experience of the divine. So trust your own religious experience. So my friends, it's time for us to break in our small groups, and we're gonna be able to be there for 10 minutes. Let's say 12 minutes, and then we'll come back and talk. But what I'm intuiting is that we all need to give ourselves a break. We all need some rest. We also need some stillness beneath the quiet. And that does not mean, please, let me rush to say, please hear me. This is a both and comment I'm about to make. If your name is on a race in January 5, working for all of that, working with Raphael Bostic, working for Ebenezer Cast Study, all those things, don't stop those. And at the same time, here's the both and. Find a time in your daily routine to have a meeting with the genius of love, the energy of the genius of love, and get into that stillness and stay in that moving stillness while you're working on voter registration or something like that. You hear what I'm saying? And by the way, I've got to say, I wept. Y'all can't tell anybody, but I got a sneak peek at the new parish profile that we're sending out to find our new rector. And there's a revision of it about kind of what we've been going through with COVID. And one of the things it says that we have become a both and church. Oh my God. I just went, glory, glory. So both and. You still have to go through life. You still have to do our responsibilities. We still have to change the world, all that kind of stuff. But do it with moving stillness. So what I want you to ask one another and share with one another, where do you need to give yourself a break? Give yourself a rest. Get still. I see Judith Smith yawning as I'm saying that. Hey, John Stewart, good to see you. So let's break for 12 minutes. Send us to our rooms, please, sir, and come back and let's share what we learned, please.